We have been living in a depressing world since 2020. Pandemic, lockdowns, wars, and ever-increasing prices have left us with little hope for the future. When the real world becomes a ball of sadness, we often look elsewhere to find some joy and allow us to feel some levity. And that's when we look to places that bring us a bit of happiness, such as listening to your favourite musician or watching a film that takes you to a different world. Within these mediums, there are personalities that symbolise the hope we look for, and no one better represents that than the media's most iconic character, Superman. The last son of Krypton has had a rocky few decades. Superman hasn't been a popular big screen figure since Christopher Reeve's Superman 2. Since then, there have been multiple films released that have been panned by audiences and critics. Out of them all, Zack Snyder's attempt was the closest to achieving a favourable reception, but his portrayal in the 2010s left some fans feeling more blue than anticipated. His representation of the Kryptonian Boy Scout was meant to shed that good boy image and transform him into a more serious hero. This led to a moody Superman who never cracked a smile, and instead of inspiring hope, became an accurate representation of the real world, sad and fearful. That was not what we needed. We needed a Superman who brought hope and could find light in dark moments and situations. Instead, the Man of Steel was full of fury and hate, so much so that the only justice he could think of to stop Zod was to snap his neck. In an attempt to strip Superman of his Boy Scout image, Man of Steel became self-indulgent in acting cool rather than telling a good story. In his first movie since 2006, Superman once again failed to score big with audiences, and he couldn't recover from that. Batman v Superman saw him moping even more and eventually dies at the end. The Justice League sees him return with a whimper, and Black Adam became the embarrassing nail in the coffin for this version of Superman. As Henry Cavill's Superman reign was coming to an end, so was the real world. Trump's presidency, Brexit, and the concerning rise of the far right led to global instability. In a period of turmoil, we needed a hero to give us hope. Enter James Gunn. Off the back of his hit film Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Gunn was approached by Peter Safran, the head of DC for the newly acquired Warner Bros., which was going through a leadership change. Part of that change was to dismantle the DC universe and start again with a single coherent voice, rather than the multiple directions implemented by the previous Warner execs. James Gunn was no stranger to Warner or DC, as he helmed the sequel to The Suicide Squad in 2021. Though it wasn't a money-making machine, it was a smash hit for those who did see it, with plenty of the positive reviews aimed at Gunn, who got the plaudits for bringing respect back to the franchise after its terrible first attempt in 2016. He was praised for bringing fun and a creative spark back to DC. No longer were they shackled by the previous leadership and their oversight, which wanted a grittier, darker representation across all the DC properties. Instead, Gunn showed the new execs at Warner that superhero movies can be entertaining. The Suicide Squad served as an audition for the director, who passed with flying colours, and was announced as a new creative head for DC shortly after. He was quick to work on building the DC schedule, and what better way to officially introduce this new era of DC than with the poster boy for all superheroes. There was much anticipation for this new version of Superman. Many questions were bandied about. Will Henry Cavill return? Will this be part of the existing DC projects that were already in production? And most importantly, will the red pants be part of the costume? All theories were circulating. There was a clamour for Man of Steel 2 among Snyderverse fans, but James Gunn needed a clean slate, and after months of casting, the news broke that we had a new Superman. This new beginning for DC would be shouldered by David Corenswet. He was a good actor with recent successes in Twister and Pearl, but not everything was positive. The main criticism was his build. Could he look like the Kryptonian? Time would tell, but what gave most people a sense of excitement was David's personality. Corenswet shared many traits with Henry Cavill, who was unfortunately put in bad movies. Both are nerds, albeit handsome ones, and Corenswet came across as humble and normal, exactly what was needed to play Superman. No ultra-masculine fragility, Corenswet was just unapologetically himself, and his Superman matched that. What James Gunn and David Corenswet created together was a Superman that is unashamed of who he is, symbolised by the new costume. Previous iterations from movies such as Man of Steel and comics from the New 52 were embarrassed by Superman's attire. The pants were taken away in favour of a full blue suit. This move was meant to show that those versions of Superman were much cooler than the lame Boy Scout from Kansas. It was a proactive decision because DC were afraid that if Superman wore his pants over his suit, then he'd be ridiculed. But the red tighty whities are as iconic as the big S on his chest. And to have James Gunn be in favour of that was a huge green flag for the direction of his Superman. This version was going to be someone who embraces being a comic book hero and not being afraid of who he is. That first decision to have Superman in pants was a big one because it represented for a lot of people the idea that you don't have to hide who you are to please others, especially for men across the world who idolise Superman but hide their true feelings behind fake masculinity. Taking Superman's iconic red underwear away was DC crumbling to public perception that it made Superman look goofy, but in reality, him having it on shows strength in your identity. It's to say, be proud of your culture and don't hide what makes you, you. And that wasn't the only positive from Superman. James Gunn included a storyline that I didn't believe would ever be a thing in a major studio, big budget franchise film. Criticism of war is not uncommon in movies. Plenty of films handle that subject matter, but in the context of the current world, this part of the story becomes more impressive. Israel has been committing genocide for a couple of years in Palestine, and though it might be black and white to you and me, in the media they make it more of a grey area that makes it seem as if it's okay for it to be happening. With the rise of fascism and far-right ideologies, any criticism of what is happening can get you in trouble. But Superman tackles that subject without ambiguity. It doesn't try to avoid the conversation or play both sides. The film explicitly tells the audience that Barovia is the bad guys for wanting to take over Jarenpur. Having one of media's iconic characters stand up against the injustice of what is happening is important. Even though Superman is fictional, his presence and sense of morals hold significant weight because he is the symbol of good and justice. What the movie does well is not to pander to the audience with its beliefs.
As great as he is, maybe Superman didn't completely think through the ramifications of the Barovia thing.
Lois Lane questioning Superman about whether he is right to do what he did is an important scene that provides balance to the conversation.
Illegally entered a country, inserting yourself in the middle of an
Hold
incredibly
on
heated
a minute.
geopolitical
Hold on a
situation.
second.
Siding with a nation, Jarenpur, which historically has not been a friend
Jarenpur
to the US,
has
against
changed.
a nation that's technically our ally, and then threatened to murder their head of state.
First of all,
She fundamentally agrees with Superman but questions the actions of how he went about it, showing there is accountability on both sides. It was a strong statement to have that storyline added and to not be scared of the repercussions. We have seen movies and talk shows taken down for criticising what is happening. So to be brave enough to stand on the right side of history with a character as beloved as Superman was admirable. At first, I didn't have too much thought about the fight scene Superman had with Ultraman, and the revelation that it was a clone version of himself felt okay. It wasn't a reveal that left me shocked, but all decisions within a film have a purpose, and why would James Gunn want to have Superman fight his clone? The key word being a clone, a copy of an original. Superman's DNA was stolen from him and then replicated to create Ultraman.
Cloning you was relatively simple. All it took was combing the aftermath of your battles until I located a strand of your hair.
What in the real world takes from people and replicates worse versions? Ultraman is a representation of AI. Artificial intelligence has been on a meteoric rise for the past few years, so much so that it is becoming harder to distinguish between real and artificially generated images and videos. But those videos and images are taken from real ones, made by actual people without their consent. Ultraman is a critique of the use of AI. Ultraman is soulless and lacks emotion, which all AI art also lacks.
But as is often the case with cloning, the match was imperfect. He might be even stupider than you, if that's possible.
And in the end, Superman defeats the fake version of himself. However, Ultraman was a threat, defeating Superman a couple of times because AI is not something that would just go away, but instead is growing in usage and has even been endorsed by cinematic legend Martin Scorsese. Even though the threat had been defeated, the risk is still there. Superman himself radiates hope within a world that tried to chew him up. The revelation that his parents sent him down to Earth to rule over the people meant Superman became public enemy number one. His supporters and even his close allies began to look at him with a cautious eye. This world which he protected now thinks he was hiding a nefarious secret mission. And though this gives Superman a lot of self-doubt, he knows he has done nothing wrong, and while his Kryptonian parents intended to send him down to rule with an iron fist, his earthly parents raised a boy who respects and loves life. What this shows us is that you are not born evil. Your surroundings are what defines the person you become, and through Martha and Jonathan Kent's love, Clark loved his new home.
Your choices, your actions, that's
what makes you who you are.
And that is why I love Superman. He is a character that is different, an immigrant who illegally came to our planet and could have easily become bitter, angry, and ultimately an evil person. But Clark uses the advantages he has over everyone for good, not for selfish gains, because he tries to stand up for all, from civilians and wool to little squirrels. In our world, those who have greater advantages over most use that to expand their wealth and power, leaving many to suffer in their greedy wake. Superman is the opposite of that. He tries to do good, and that is what makes him so admirable. But my favourite aspect of Superman isn't anything in the film, but the impact it made outside in the real world. Hope Core is a trend that is exactly what it says. It's a type of content that provides hope to those who watch it, and the aftermath of Superman's release saw thousands of people create Hope Core videos relating to Superman. They varied from self-improvement to good vibes, and that is the positive impact Superman should have on people. In the end, James Gunn's Superman was exactly what we needed, a glimmer of hope shining within a dark storm we currently live in. The storm is still raging, but there are amazing people out there doing their best to help and support those who need it most. So keep making a difference no matter how small, because as the movie shows us, it's cool to be human.
But that is being human. And that's my greatest strength.
And if you ask me, that's punk rock.